Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Today I'm really just going to watch the Bruce Lee interview and talk about why his philosophies are still relevant in 2024. The guy that did this video is Ma 我在學英語，我在學英語。Yeah, so basically it's got Chinese subtitles, yes, it's English subtitles, and I'm Chinese myself, so this is traditional Chinese that they're learning. Traditional Chinese, if you want to learn traditional Chinese, and I speak English fluently. It's my reaction, and please watch the full video. I'll put the description underneath, but this is my reaction. This is my personal beliefs of what Bruce Lee philosophy is and why it's important in 2024 and why it's relevant to Chinese people. And yet he really hit the bar of what Chinese were. Like, especially if you were in the 1990s, you were raised in the UK, or you were raised in America, 1989. You really tried to find your identity and you didn't know if you were British or you were Chinese. Bruce Lee kind of set the example of understanding our Asian roots, but yet also maintaining our values and beliefs. Yet he taught us Confucius, Daoism, and Buddhism all in one, and he tried to simplify it as much as possible because his martial art background was based on that concept. Let's watch it, and I will pause the video when I feel like I want to talk about certain things in the interview. Let's go.
By James Francisco. I said, empty your mind. Be formless, shapeless, like water. Now you put water into a cup, it becomes the cup. You put water into a bottle, it becomes the bottle.
Let's move myself up here. Move myself here.
Can flow, or it can crash.
I wonder if I can.
Be water.
Yeah, excellent.
Bruce Lee faces a real dilemma. He's on the verge of stardom in the United States with a projected TV series on the horizon, but he's just achieved superstardom as a film actor here in Hong Kong. So what does he choose, the East or the West? It's the kind of problem that most budding movie actors would welcome.
And just want to say, this interview came out in 1995. He did this interview in 1971, and it was held back. Wow. 25 years after Bruce Lee died. This interview, I remember it was 1995 or 1994. Correct me if I'm wrong in the chat, but I do remember if it was 1994 or 1995 it came out. And when I first saw this as an interview when I was like 6 years old, there was so much philosophical meaning, and it made me want to go back to my Chinese roots. Yeah, let's continue.
Show, the program that comes to you from the major capitals of the world. This edition comes to you from Hong Kong. And Pierre's guest is the man who taught karate, judo, and Chinese boxing to James Garner, Steve McQueen, Lee Marvin, and James Coburn. The newest Mandarin superstar, known in the West for his appearances in Batman, The Green Hornet, Ironside, and Longstreet. His name is Bruce Lee, and he doesn't even speak Mandarin. And here's Pierre.
Well, how can you play in Mandarin movies if you don't even speak Mandarin? How do you do that?
Well, first of all, I speak only Cantonese.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there is quite a difference as far as pronunciation and things like that go.
So somebody else's voice is used, right?
Definitely, definitely.
You just make the words. Doesn't that sound strange when you go to the movies, especially in Hong Kong, in your own town, and you see yourself with somebody else's voice?
Well, not really, you see, because most of the Mandarin picture done here are dubbed anyway.
They dubbed anyway?
Anyway, I mean, disregard. I mean, they shoot with...
Back then in movies, especially because Bruce Lee spoke Cantonese, the movies that were dubbed in Mandarin, especially in 1960s and 1970s, definitely.
The out sound. So it doesn't, make any
Your
difference.
lips never quite make the right words, do they?
Well, that's where the difficulty lies, you see. I mean, in order to, because the Cantonese have a different way of saying things, different from the Mandarin.
Yeah.
So I have to find like something similar to that and keep a kind of a feeling going behind it. Something that matching the Mandarin do.
Like the
Does
old
it sound
silent
complicated?
days. Like the old silent days. But I gather in the movies made here, the dialogue is pretty stilted anyway.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, see, to me, a motion picture is motion.
Yeah.
I mean, you gotta keep the dialogue down to the minimum.
Did you look at many Mandarin movies before you started playing in the first one?
Yes.
What did you think of them when you saw them?
Quality-wise, I mean, I have to admit that it's not quite up to the standard. However, it is growing and it is getting higher and going toward that standard, than what I would term quality.
They say the secret of your success in that movie, The Big Boss, which was such a success, and rocketed you to stardom in Asia, was that you did your own fighting. As an expert in the various martial arts in China, what did you think of the fighting that you saw in the movies that you studied before you became a star?
Well, I mean, definitely in the beginning, I had no intention or whatsoever that what I was practicing and what I'm still practicing now would lead to this
Yeah, I
to
know.
begin with. But martial art has a very, very deep meaning as far as my life is concerned, because as an actor, as a martial artist, as a human being, all these I have learned from martial art.
Maybe for our audience who doesn't know.
He does describe this in detail, but let me say where martial arts came from. Martial arts came from a Shaolin temple. A Shaolin temple mostly is Buddhist arts, respect, mannerism, dignity, as he's saying, as a general person in public. These things, especially in Confucius philosophy, are most important in society, in work ethic, and relationships, and friendships, and also society. Just let me say that and put.
Know what it means. You might explain exactly what you mean by martial art.
Right. Martial art include all the combative arts like karate or
Judo.
karate, judo, Chinese kung fu or Chinese boxing, whatever you call it. All those. You see, like Aikido, Korean, I can go on and on and on. But it's a combative form of fighting. I mean, it's not, some of them became sport, but some of them are still not. I mean, they use, for instance, kicking to the groin, jabbing fingers at the eyes, and things like that.
No wonder you're successful in the Chinese movies are full of this kind of action anyway. They needed a guy like you could.
Violence, man.
So you didn't have to use a double when you moved into the motion picture world here. You did it all yourself. Can you break 5 or 6 pieces of wood with your hand or your foot?
I'll probably break my hand and foot.
There, I pause it here because realistically, martial arts, you don't need to show it. You only need it when it's needed. You don't need to perform it to the way how people break boards, show how many boards they break. Bruce Lee is showing the very benevolence of an act of a person that should be conduct in society. This is very important. I think a lot of people don't understand this, but for me, when I heard this the first time, I remember saying to myself, I was like saying, even if you were good at something, I dialed it down and just be myself. I don't need to be more. I only need to do it when it's needed.
But tell me a little bit. You set up a school in Hollywood, didn't you, for people like James Garner and Steve McQueen and the others?
Yes.
Why would they want to learn Chinese martial art? Because of a movie role?
Not really. Most of them, you see, to me, at least the way that when I teach it, all type of knowledge ultimately means self-knowledge.
All types of knowledge ultimately means self-knowledge. Now that quote can go into anything. So for example, as a human person as we are, we learn things. We learn new skills. We learn new activities. We learn new languages. We learn new cultures. You can learn anything. But remember, whatever you learn is yours. And only yours. That's why the quote is so powerful. Until this day, this quote, all type of knowledge, ultimately means self-knowledge. Don't forget that.
Mm-hmm. So therefore, they are coming in and ask me to teach them not so much of how to defend themselves or how to do somebody in. Rather, they want to learn to express themselves through some movement, be it anger, be it determination, or whatsoever. So in other words, what I'm saying, therefore, is that he is paying me to show him in combative form the art of expressing the human body.
Which is acting, in a sense, isn't it?
Well,
or it would be useful, too, for an actor to have.
It might sound too philosophical, but it's an acting.
But it's unacting or acting, unacting. Now, this is very philosophical. Bruce Lee's starting to go philosophical right here. A lot of people wouldn't understand this quote. It's very hard to understand this. He's saying, I'll give you an example. Best way I can describe this. You're very good at something. Okay, for example, you are good at, in a restaurant, in the bar. But you act like you don't know. But when you do it like a professional.
Acting or act.
And this quote means that as a individual, you're not showing off. You are being your general self with a respectful manner. And I believe this because this is definitely what Confucius has taught us. Respect, mannerism, dignity, and benevolence is important in society. Let's continue.
Acting, unacting.
You've lost me.
I have. So what I'm saying, actually, you see, it's a combination of both. Here it is the natural instinct, and here is control. You are to combine the two in harmony. Not if you have one to the extreme, you will be very unscientific. If you have another to the extreme, you become all of a sudden a mechanical man, no longer a human being. So it is a successful combination of both. So therefore, it is not only, therefore it's not pure naturalness or unnaturalness. The ideal is unnatural naturalness or natural unnaturalness.
And the interviewer actually talks about the yin yang symbol, and this is basically why we have to have both parts of our personalities. You can't be too dark or you can't be too light. This is why the interviewer knew straight away he was talking about yin yang. Let's continue.
Yin yang, eh?
Right, man, that's it.
One of your students, James Coburn, played in a movie called Iron Man Flint, in which he used karate. Is that what he learned from you?
He learned it after.
Oh, he went
yeah.
after he played in Iron Man.
Right. You see, actually, I do not teach, karate because I do not believe in styles anymore.
This is another quote that I love, and I will explain why I like this quote, and I think I will describe it in a very different terminology that people will understand later.
I do not believe that there is such thing as like Chinese way of fighting or the Japanese way of fighting or whatever way of fighting, because unless human beings have 3 arms and 4 legs, we will have a different form of fighting. But basically, we have only 2 hands and 2 feet. So styles tends to not only separate man, because they have their own doctrines, and then the doctrine became the gospel truth, that you cannot change, but if you do not have styles, if you just say, well, here I am, as a human being, how can I express myself totally and completely? Now, that way, you won't create a style, because style is a crystallization, that way it's a process of continuing growth.
You talk about
Now, the interviewer asked him, did you teach James Gordon karate? No. And then Bruce Lee said no. He said he taught them art, that he was taught after, but he doesn't believe in styles. In general, what I believe, for example, I can put you example of what I say about when it comes to religion. All religion talk about one God. There's only one God. There's only one God. But each of the messengers have taught the very same thing. Learn to respect others. Be respectful in society. Have benevolence. Do charitable deeds. Do what's right in society. And be good to your neighbor. Do not kill. The rest of it is all the same. It doesn't matter which prophet you go to, they all teach the same standards. God exists, always exists, but it commends when he's also talking about styles. You can put anything you learn and put it into whatever you want in your life. It's a very powerful quote. That he doesn't believe in styles, he believes them all to be the same. Martial arts, you only got 2 hands and 2 feet. But it only makes sense when people start realizing that all these philosophies teach us something.
We use the elbow, and
use the thumb.
you name it, man. We
Use it all.
You have to, see, because that is the expression of the human body. Everything. Not just the hand. And when you're talking about combat, well, if it is a sport, now you're talking about something else. You have regulations, you have rules. But when you're talking about fighting, as it is, with no rules,
real fighting.
well, then, baby, you better train every part of your body. And when you do punch, now I'm leaning forward a little bit, hoping not to hurt any camera angle. You got to put the whole hip into it.
Jesus, he was fast. You can tell just by the punch itself, like, even from that, you didn't want to be close range into this guy, because if you had a close range in you'd be gone. His speed definitely was fast.
And snap it and get all your energy in there and make this into a weapon.
I don't want to tangle you in any dark that right now. You came at me pretty fast there. What is the difference between Chinese boxing and what we see these young men doing at 8 o'clock every morning on the rooftops in parks called shadow boxing, which they're always...
Well, actually, you see, that is part of Chinese boxing.
Yes.
There are so many schools.
Everybody here seems to be, going like this all the time.
Well, that's good. I'm very glad. I'm very glad to see that, because at least somebody is caring for their own body, right?
Yeah.
That's a good sign. Well, it's a kind of a slow form of exercise, which is called Tai Chi Chuan. I'm speaking Mandarin just now. In Cantonese, I did too. Okay?
True.
And it's more of an exercise for the elderly, not so much for the
Give
young.
me a demonstration. Show me. Can you do it, a little bit of it? Just so
the hand-wise is very slow.
Oh, is it?
and you push it out, but all the time you are keeping the continuity going, bending, stretching, everything. Suppose, I mean, you just keep it moving.
It's like a ballet dancer there.
Yeah, it is. I mean, to them, you see, the idea is running water never grows stale. So you got to just keep on flowing.
Of all your students, famous, James Garner, Steve McQueen, Lee Marvin, James Coburn, Roman Polanski, which was the best? Who adapted best to this Oriental form of exercise and defense?
Well, depending, okay? Now, as a fighter, Steve McQueen, now, he is good in that department because that son of a gun got the toughness in him.
I see it on the screen.
I mean, he would say, all right, baby, here I am, man. And he'll do it.
Yeah.
Now, James Coburn is a peace-loving man.
I met him.
Right? I mean, you've met him. I mean, he's really, really nice. I mean, super mellow and all that. I mean, now he appreciates the philosophical part of it. Therefore, his understanding of it is deeper than Steve. So it's really hard to say. You see what I'm saying now?
I see.
I mean, it's different. So that's, depending on what you see in it.
I do say this, Bruce knew martial arts as a physical action form. Like action form. He didn't understand I think he understood the philosophical form, but where it kind of constructed the behavior of a human person, of understanding, where martial arts is kind of giving you the defensive arts rather than hurting others. He understood that, but I think the very form that he didn't understand was because martial arts is a very religious form factor, it's also understanding yourself, understanding you, knowing your skills, knowing what you can do, and in a tough situation, knowing what to do. But I believe there is a very powerful essence of Buddhism in there. But he as an individual, he was an atheist, I would say. That's where I kind of feel like he only understood the normal stuff.
Our world, and haven't since the days of the Greeks who did, combined philosophy and art with sport. But quite clearly, the Oriental attitude is that the three are...
This is really important. That the three... What he's going to say now, I will pause after what he said. But these are the three important things that he learned from martial arts.
Facets of the same thing.
Man, listen, you see, really, to me, ultimately, martial art means honestly expressing yourself. Now, it is very difficult to do. I mean, it is easy for me to put on a show and be cocky and be flooded with a cocky feeling and then feel like pretty cool and all that. Or I can make all kinds of phony things, you see what I mean? Blinded by it. Or I can show you some really fancy movement. But to express oneself honestly, not lying to oneself, and to express myself honestly, that, my friend, is very hard to do. And you have to train. You have to keep your reflexes so that when you want it, it's there. When you want to move, you're moving. And when you move, you're determined to move. Not taking 1 inch, not anything less than that. If I want to punch, I'm going to do it, man, and I'm going to do it, you see. So that is the type of thing you have to train yourself into it, to become one with the... You think?
Yeah, this is very un-Western, this attitude. I want to ask you about your movie and TV.
It's very hard to do. Honestly express yourself, but yet he's also talking about training as well. I would say that when you act cocky and you try to show off too much in society, that's not the real you. The real you is generally what you can do and what you can't do. So he was really saying, and I really say honestly express yourself was the very most important factor. Bruce taught us that when you really want to be you, when you really want to do really well in whatever you do, you need to train or get more knowledge in that subject. And that's what I feel with honesty express yourself means, that you are really who you are. And you can do better if you're willing to learn more. That's what I'm saying.
TV career, but first we'll take a break. Then I'll be back with Bruce Lee. I've been talking to Bruce Lee mainly about the Chinese martial arts, which include things like Chinese boxing, karate, and judo, which is what he taught when he was in Hollywood. After he left the University of Washington, where he studied, of all things, philosophy, if you can believe that. He did, but that perhaps you understand why the two go together from the first half of this program. And you can perhaps understand how he got into films. He knew a lot of actors, but I'm told that you got the job on the Green Hornet, where you played Kato the chauffeur, mainly because you're the only Chinese-looking guy who could pronounce the name of the leading character, Brue Lee.
I meant that as a joke, of course. And it's a heck of a name, man. I mean, every time I said it at that time, I was super conscious. I mean, really, that's another interesting thing, huh? Let's say if you learn to speak Chinese.
Yeah.
And it's not difficult to learn and speak the word. The hard thing, the difficult thing, it's behind what is the meaning, what brought on the expression and feelings behind those words. Like when I first arrived in the United States, and I look at a Caucasian, and I really would not know whether he was putting me on, or is he really angry, because we have different way of reacting to it. See, those are the difficult things, you see.
It's almost as if you came upon a strange race where a smile didn't mean what it does to us. In fact, a smile doesn't always mean the same, does it?
Of course not.
Yeah, I just thought of it.
This is the one thing. And I would say this maybe for more foreign people that was born over a different country. You were more of an outsider during the 90s, I'd say. Because they saw you as a very different person. And you didn't know if they were smiling because they're laughing at you, or they saw you as a completely different person. Obviously now in this standard we live in a very different world, but back then, especially being Asian and in the 90s, was a very different period, which is interesting. It was like I really took that ahead, and I felt for myself that being an Asian overseas and being born and raised in England, you do see a very different side, and you start questioning, are they just taking a mickey out of me, or do they see something different? That did make me think that, especially when Bruce said that. That was definitely very, very powerful towards me.
Tell me about the big break when you played in Longstreet. I must tell the audience that
That's it.
Bruce Lee had a bit part or a supporting role in the Longstreet series, and this had an enormous effect on the audience. What was it?
Well, you see, the title of that particular episode of Longstreet is called The Way of the Intercepting Fist. Now, I think the successful ingredient in it was because I was being Bruce Lee.
Yourself.
Myself, right. And did that part, just express myself, like I say, honestly express myself at that time. And because of that, I brought, favorable mentioning in like New York Times, which says like the Chinaman, who incidentally came off quite convincingly enough to earn himself a television series, and so on and so on and so forth.
Can you remember the lines by Sterling Sullivan, the key lines?
He's one of my students, you know that?
Was he too?
Yes.
Too bad. Everybody is your student. But you read, there were some lines that expressed your philosophy. I don't know if you remember them or not.
I remember that.
Let's hear.
is what it is, okay?
You're talking to Longstreet, played by James Francesco.
I said, empty your mind. Be formless, shapeless, like water. Now, you put water into a cup, it becomes the cup. You put water into a bottle, it becomes the bottle. You put it in a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Now, water can flow, or it can crash. Be water, my friend, like that.
Now that philosophy, water, I was wondering where he got that philosophy from. And when I started researching on Daoism, Lao Tzu was the first one that actually said that we are the forms of water. Whatever we put our minds into, we could generate to become that particular thing. So whatever you want to study, whatever you want to put your heart into, whatever you want to actually devote your life to, you're putting so much mind and energy into that certain thing, you generate to become into that certain thing. This is the kind of like Taoism is water. Water can be boiled. Water can hurt people. Water, especially tsunamis, and especially when there's flooding. Human beings are generally water particles in every essence, and we are very much like water. Because if you want to be something, you got to put all that effort into one certain subject or one sort of devotion that you want to be. Just saying, this quote is always famous. And I would say that this quote comes from Taoism, Lao Tzu.
I see. I get the idea. I get the power behind it. So, now, two things have happened. First, there's a pretty good chance that you'll get a TV series in the States called The Warriors, in which you use...
Actually, speaking of which, this has become a Netflix series. Go on Netflix and type in The Warrior. That's written by Brue Lee. It took a long time after his passing. It came out like in 2022, I believe, or 2023. Correct me if I'm wrong. Just comment down below. And it got up to like 4 seasons. Yeah, check it out. It's quite good, actually. But unfortunately, Brue Lee couldn't play the role, but it is inspired by his script.
Well,
in a Western setting?
That was the original idea. Now, Paramount, I did Longstreet for Paramount, and Paramount wants me to be in a television series. On the other hand, Warner Brother wants me to be in another one, but both of them, I think, they want me to be in a modernized type of a thing. And they think that Western idea is out.
But
whereas
you want to do the Western, eh?
I want, because you see, I mean, how else can you justify all these punching and kicking and violence except in the period of the West? I mean, in nowadays, I mean, you don't go around on the street kicking people or punching people. Because if you do, that's it. I mean, I don't care how good you are,
But this is true also of the Chinese dramas, which are mainly costume dramas. They're all full of blood and gore over here.
You mean here? Yeah. Well, unfortunately, you see, I hope that the picture I am in would either explain why the violence was done, whether right or wrong or whatnot. But unfortunately, pictures, most of them here, are done mainly just for the sake of violence. You know what I mean? Like, fighting for 30 minutes, get stabbed.
But I'm fascinated. Let me give you your microphone back. I'm fascinated that you came back.
I am a martial artist.
You came back to Hong Kong on the verge of...
I would say because he couldn't do the Warrior TV show or the other Paramount TV show that he wanted to do, this skyrocketed his career, become Big Boss, then Fist of Fury, then The Way of the Dragon, and then it was Enter the Dragon, his 4 films. And The Game of Death, obviously, he didn't complete. This is where his stardom actually skyrocketed, because he couldn't do those 2 TV shows. And because of those films, till this day, it's still considered one of the best martial art films of Brue Lee, because he was just such a physical performer. and you could see his actual skill. You knew that he could fight.
Success in Hollywood and full of it. And suddenly, on the strength of one picture, you become a superstar. Everybody knows you. You have to change your phone number. You get mobbed in the streets. Now, what are you going to do? Are you going to be able to live in both worlds? Are you going to be a superstar here, or one in the States, or both?
Well, let me say this. First of all, the word superstar really turned me off, and I'll tell you why. Because the word star, man, is an...
And I think a lot of people can learn from this, especially. I think a lot of people that have fame, get too famous, they kind of lose their freedoms. And Bruce Lee realized this.
an illusion. It's something what the public calls you. You should look upon oneself as an actor, man. I mean, you would be very pleased if somebody say, "Hey, man, you are a super actor." It is much better than, superstar.
Yeah,
Therefore,
but you've got
think
to admit that you are a superstar. You're not going to, if you're going to give me the truth.
I'm honestly saying this, okay? Yes, I have been very successful, okay? But I think the word star I do not look upon myself as a star. I really don't. I mean, believe me, man, when I say it. I mean, I'm not saying it because
What are you going to do? Let's get back to the question.
Okay.
Are you going to stay in Hong Kong and be famous? Or are you going to go to the United States and be famous? Or are you going to try and eat your cake and have it too?
I am going to do both because, you see, I have already made up my mind that in the United States, I think something about the Oriental, the true Oriental should...
And let me say this now. Still to this day, Asians have not showed in film, and I say this, Bruce Lee is saying this now, I'll let him finish after once I've said my opinion, the true Asian man. And I don't think any director has actually done that yet, apart from him, in general, because I think all his films, he shows the virtues of an Asian man. And I would say the three things that are important: Confucius values, Buddhism, and Daoism. The three concepts of Asian men. And I still feel like there hasn't been a film. Maybe now, with The Warrior, definitely there was definitely a bit of that, because it's Shannon Lee's Bruce Lee's daughters that's made the TV series. There's maybe that, but I don't think I've seen anything with that type of concept in film.
be shown.
Hollywood sure as heck hasn't.
You better believe it, man. I mean, it's always that pigtail and bouncing around, chop, with the eyes slant and all that. And I think that's very, very out of...
Is it true that you were the first job you had was being cast as Charlie Chan's number one?
Yeah,
boy?
number one son, yeah. No,
They never made a movie.
No. They were going to make it into like a new Chinese James Bond type of a thing.
Oh,
Now that, the old man Chan is dead, Charlie is dead, and his son is carrying on.
But they didn't do that.
Batman came along, you see, because and then everything was started to be going into that, that kind of
which you were in. But
by the way, I did a really terrible job in that, I have to say.
Really? You didn't like yourself? I didn't see it. Let me ask you, however, about the problems that you face as a Chinese hero in an American series. Have people come up in the industry and said, well, we don't know how the audience are going to take a non-American?
Well, such question has been raised. In fact, it is being discussed, and that is why The Warrior is not going to be on.
I see.
You see, because unfortunately, such thing does exist in this world. You see, like, I don't know, certain part of the country, right, where like they think that business-wise it's a risk. And I don't blame them. I mean, in the same way, it's like in Hong Kong, if a foreigner come and became a star, if I were the man with the money, I probably would have my own worry of whether or not the acceptance would be there. But that's all right, because if you honestly express yourself, it doesn't matter, see?
Back then, for Bruce's era, there was a lot of racism, and I believe that because he was a Oriental, they didn't see him with the talent of acting. But when he was doing those 4 films in Hong Kong, he really showed that he was an actor, but yet also a martial artist. A lot of people will still say the debate is, was he just an actor, or did he truly know martial arts? And I would say he truly knew martial arts, because when it comes to martial arts isn't just about fighting. It's like I said, it has a lot of concepts. Martial arts is Daoism, Buddhism, and Buddhism. Taoist, Buddhism, Confucius beliefs. Those are really important in the martial arts system. That's what I would say.
Are you, how about the other side of the coin? Is it possible that you are, I mean, you're fairly hip and fairly Americanized. Are you too Western for Oriental audiences, do you think?
Oh, man, like, how? I have been.
Yeah.
I have been criticized for that.
You have, eh?
Oh,
I would
yes,
think
definitely. Well, let me say this. When I do the Chinese film, I'll try my best not to be as American as I, have been adjusted to for the last 12 years in the States. But when I go back to the States, it seems to be the other way around. You know
You're
what I
too
mean?
exotic, eh?
Yeah, man. I mean, they're trying to get me to do too many things that are really for the sake of being exotic. You understand what I'm trying to say?
Oh, sure.
So it's really, I mean, it's
when you live in both worlds, it brings us problems as well as advantages, and you've got both. Time to go to a commercial. I'll be back in a moment with Bruce Lee. Let me ask you whether the change in attitude on the part of the Nixon administration towards China has helped your chances of starring in an American TV series.
Well, first of all, this happened before that.
Yeah.
But I do think that things of China...
I think this is quite amazing. He had this interview in 1971. And if you think of where Asians are now, it's a very different world now. And how much influence, especially now with Black Myth Wukong coming into the Western audience and understanding more of our Chinese philosophies. He predicted this. Just listen.
Chinese will be quite interesting for the next few years. I mean, not that I'm politically, inclining toward anything.
No, I understand that. I'm just wondering.
But I mean, once the opening of China, I mean, that it will bring more understanding.
Yeah.
More things that are, different, and maybe in the contrast of comparison, some new thing might grow. So therefore, I mean, it's a very rich period to be in. I mean, like, if I were born, let's say, 40 years ago.
Yeah.
If I have a thought in my mind, I said, boy, I'm going to star in a movie or star in a television series in America. Well, that might be a vague dream, but I think right now, maybe.
You still think of yourself Chinese, or do you ever...
This is, I think I agree with him most definitely. I'll let him say.
You think of yourself as North American?
You know what I want to think of myself? As a human being. Because, I mean, I don't want to sound like,
I disagree with him on that. Is definitely Confucius is saying that we are, because Confucius believes in heaven and earth, and I would say that without heaven, without earth, and without Confucius's philosophies that taught us benevolence, respect, mannerism, dignity, and the rest of it, we won't be what we are. And that's where I disagree with him. I mean, I don't want it to sound like, as Confucius say, it's definitely a Confucius quote. You can't say that's not. That's personally my opinion, but that's his own. I'm going to say that.
Confucius say, but under the sky, under the heaven, man, there is but one family.
That's very true. There's only one family.
It just so happened, man, that people are different.
Okay, we got to go. Thank you, Bruce Lee, for coming here. Thank you for
Pierre.
watching.
Thank you.
Yeah, we are now finished with the interview with Bruce Lee. I really hope you enjoyed my personal views and personal opinions. I think till this day, this interview is definitely more philosophical. There's a lot of things that you can learn from it. There's a lot of sort of outtakes that you can take it for yourself. Every philosophy has its own meaning, but deep down, there's a philosophical meaning for in life. Without heaven, without earth, without you, the world won't rotate. And being human and how we interact with others is important. And how we act in society is important. Hope really guys enjoyed the video. Catch you guys later.